guys, welcome back to another video. In the last video we looked at, if I'll let me go back, there. We looked at King Egbert. Just a quick recap for you. We had a little introduction to Anglo-Saxon England. We know it spanned from 410 AD to 1066 AD. This is one of the maps of Anglo-Saxon England, with the four kingdoms there. Wales was its own country, that's not part of Anglo-Saxon. Danes, the purple here is to show where Danish settlers, I want to say, landed. So obviously they would have came in here, obviously over from Denmark, and then they kind of came down and attacked and tried to take over most of England. But yeah, we learned about King Egbert. What else? There was a battle where we touched on. I cannot. Yeah, I don't know. There was Battle of Ellendon. We looked a little bit on that. We will look at battles in other episodes, other videos and such, but in this video we are learning about King Aethelwulf, and I would like to point out that all the information in this video on the slides have been directly taken from an article written for Historic UK by Jessica Brain. You should check out that website, Historic UK. It's got a bunch of articles on all sorts of topics on there. Kings and Queens of England, I think, are mostly written by Jessica Brain. But it's all very interesting, and if you do want to learn a little bit more, you should definitely go and look at that website. Now, some words have been added and or changed in this video, but none of the information on the slides is my own information. It's all been taken from Jessica Brain's article. So in 839 AD, Aethelwulf became King of Wessex and inherited the throne from his father, King Egbert, who passed on not only title but responsibility of numerous territories spanning the kingdoms across England, and with it, constant threat of these kingdoms being taken away. Aethelwulf inherited the throne at a time when his father had taken up a great deal of power, so he had brought up a lot of power in the past couple of years. He'd expanded his territory to include the southeast, as well as briefly the kingdom directly north of Wessex, which is Mercia. So he had that as well. Egbert sent Lord Aethelwulf at the time, he would have been Lord, not King, with an army to Kent, to try and expel the Mercian power base and install himself as the new sub-king of the region. By the latter years of his father's reign, Lord Aethelwulf, there should be a space there between Lord and Aethelwulf. Aethelwulf saw his father grapple with the growing presence of the Vikings. Particularly, it would have been Danish Vikings, and they had joined forces with the rebel Cornish, so Cornishmen or people from Cornwall wouldn't have been happy with King Egbert. So they joined with the Vikings against King Egbert at the Battle of Hingston Down in 838. Fortunately for Egbert, or Edgebert, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I'm saying how it looks, and his men, they were able to suppress this threat. However, his reign drew to a close. Lord Aethelwulf would set to inherit a complex role of maintaining a balance of power, as well as warding off potential threats from neighbouring kingdoms and overseas interests. So, obviously, with the four kingdoms, they were all kind of looking for for the most power. They were always looking to conquer. So Aethelwulf would have had to try and prevent his kingdom from being taken over. So in 839 AD, Lord Aethelwulf was crowned King of Wessex. He succeeded his father, who made great strides in ensuring a vast and stable kingdom would be passed on to his further descendants. Moreover, with such an inheritance, obviously a substantial royal income came, but responsibility to maintain the power which was secured by his father, and in turn pass it on to subsequent generations. So further, also they want to keep it in their bloodline. So Aethelwulf's child would then take over the kingdom, obviously in 858. He was able to achieve this in 851 at the Battle of Aclea, when King Aethelwulf and his men were able to inflict great losses on the invaders, securing West Saxon hegemony, which West Saxon is Wessex. So they were very successful at the Battle of Aclea. And while the exact details of the battle remain fragmented, so they're not completely whole, there's parts of it are there but not the whole thing. It was recorded in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle that the Danish Vikings travelled up the River Thames with around 350 ships, which would account to thousands of Vikings, so thousands of men. They first tackled the King of Mercia and made their way to Surrey to fight King Aethelwulf of Wessex and his son Lord Aethelbald at Aclea. Fortunately for the king, his decisive victory would ensure his position and that of his family against further threats from the Vikings. This dominance was further enhanced in a battle off the coast of Sandwich, which, led by his other son, Lord Aethelstan, who had died sadly not long afterwards. Whilst combating the consistent threat posed by the Vikings, they were always attacking. The political climate for alliances and peace talks between rival kingdoms looked more conductive than ever, particularly when so much was at stake. So alliances needed to be formed in order to secure maximum safety at that point, because the Danish Vikings, the Vikings were posing such a threat. Obviously united under a common enemy, the recently crowned King of Mercia, King Burgred, had approached King Aethelwulf of Wessex with a proposition of alliance. So he wanted Mercia and Wessex to be allied, because many felt that they were strongest together. And also considering the their historic rivalry, Wessex and Mercia, this moment was truly historic. The accord, so the alliance, or the agreement, brokered by the two kings was cemented by the marriage of King Burgred of Mercia to King Aethelwulf's daughter, Lady Aelswith. Moreover, part of the agreement, the lands of Berkshire, which had been a point of contention for both kingdoms, was now in the control of Wessex. So Berkshire was obviously a highly disputed place. They didn't know. People in Mercia said it belonged to them. People in Wessex said it belonged to them. It was a highly disputed area, and with this alliance, it was passed into Wessex control. With the wedding celebrated in Chippenham, Wessex, King Burgred of Mercia proceeded to call on King Aethelwulf of Wessex for assistance in suppressing the Welsh, who were rebelling against his rule. So if we think back to that map, not Wessex, Mercia and Wales share a border, and the Welsh clearly did not support King Burgred of Mercia. They did not support his kingship. And the combined forces of King Burgred of Mercia and King Aethelwulf of Wessex had proved enough to overwhelm the rebels, so they defeated these Welsh rebels that were, so feeling secure in the new alliance, and with invasions from the Danish Vikings, temporarily dealt with, keyword there, temporarily, King Aethelwulf decided to go on a pilgrimage to Rome. Pilgrimage is see, I know what a pilgrimage is, I just forgot. It's basically you go somewhere and you just pray, to give the simple version. In 855 AD, King Aethelwulf left Wessex in the capable hands of his eldest son, Lord Ethelbald. And meanwhile, his other son, Lord Ethelbert, was given the responsibility of the southeastern territory of their kingdom. King Aethelwulf was accompanied by his two younger sons, Lords Ethelred and Alfred, who were still young children. Accompanied by a large retinue to support him on this trip, King Aethelwulf stayed in Rome for a year and gave significant and valuable gifts to the Diocese of Rome, which would have included items like goblets, swords, and a gold crown weighing almost 2 kilos. With the journey illustrating not only King Aethelwulf's religious conviction and piety, but also his prestigious and successful English royal, his trip back to England would make one final and significant pit stop. He had made a noteworthy visit to the court of King Charles the Bald. I'm not sure, is that supposed to be the Bold? Anyway, in which the two men had much to discuss. And in time they came to an agreement of creating a formal alliance with which would be ratified by the subsequent marriage of King Aethelwulf to Charles's daughter Judith, who was only 14 at the time, so a very controversial marriage when you look back on it now, because this would have been 856 as he's returning back to England and he's marrying a 14-year-old. Definitely questionable nowadays. It's illegal nowadays, but it was fairly normal back then to get married at such a young age. And whilst both kings had overlapping interests and mutual experiences of Viking threats, Aethelwulf's newly crowned queen would validate their shared opinions on varieties of issues as both kings had power to consolidate in the face of future threats. King Aethelwulf, however, needed to look closer to home in order to find danger likely to usurp his power. There's still quite a few slides. In the time that the king had spent away on his pilgrimage, his son Lord Aethelwulf, In the time the king spent away on his pilgrimage, his son Lord Aethelwulf had claimed the throne of Wessex as his own. Such a decision to rival his father had inevitably came to a head when Aethelwulf returned to England, discovering infighting within his own kingdom. Back home, Lord Aethelwulf was less than pleased to see his father return and reclaim his throne. And to make matters worse he returned accompanied by his very young wife, who could bear him more children and rivals, which ultimately means that Aethelwulf's claim to the throne could be weakening. But if he was the eldest, he would have likely been crowned king anyway. As it happened, this wasn't the case, and by this point Aethelwulf had won the favour of some important people in Wessex, such as the Bishop Elfstan of Sherborne and Ealdorman Aenwulf of Somerset. He would therefore continue his efforts to hold on to the crown, bolstered by the support he received and unwilling to step aside for his father. So, even with Aethelwulf back in England, Aethelwulf was still claiming that he was the rightful king already, despite his father not being dead or exiled So now forced to accept this new power dynamic within his kingdom and very much feeling his age, King Aethelwulf stood back and agreed for Lord Aethelwulf to retain control whilst Aethelwulf would rule over the southeastern region. Not long afterwards, he did pass away on January 13th, 858 AD, leaving behind a substantial dynastic legacy which would continue to hold on to power long after he was gone. King Aethelwulf may not have had the most memorable reign as king, however, his sense of duty and knowledge of kingship allowed him to retain the crown for future generations and build on the legacy which had been created by his father, the late King Egbert. The kingdom of Wessex was here to stay, and so too was a powerful royal dynasty, which continued to influence the politics, society, and culture of England. So that is all for this video. Like I said at the start, none of this information came directly from me. It came directly from an article written by Jessica Brain for Historic UK. I'm not claiming this information to come from me. I'm not claiming it as my own. I'm encouraging you to go and read more of her articles. They're all, or a lot of them, are on Historic UK under Kings and Queens of England or something along those lines. So definitely go and check them out. And in the next video, we will be looking at King Aethelwulf, Aethelwulf's son. So if you guys have enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.